This program was first broadcast on Canterbury's access media station, Plains FM, and was made with the assistance of New Zealand On Air.
It's time for Emergence News on Plains FM 96.9, Citizen-Made Radio.
Kia ora and welcome to Emergence News on Plains FM 96.9. Plains FM's transmitting, John and Peter, who are in the studio with me, transmitting as far north as Cheviot, south to Ashburton, west to the Southern Alps, and into Littleton on Banks Peninsula. So that's quite good coverage locally.
That's amazing coverage.
Yeah. And that's a community radio station, Citizen-Made Radio. Is what we're all about here. We're citizens of Christchurch in New Zealand, the South Island of New Zealand.
And the planet. We're citizens of the planet.
We're entitled to be here, John.
Yes.
On the previous two programs here on Emergence News, we were talking about some of the great individuals who have created our culture and civilization. For example, we talked about Jesus and his disciples, the apostles, Peter. Mm-hmm. Now, Peter was away, and when John and I were talking on this subject, we both looked in the corner of the room where Peter sits, and he wasn't here, and we were most upset at the time.
Where's our researcher?
Yeah, where's our researcher?
Where's my assistant?
That's right. Where's he with the facts and figures when we need them? And Peter, we were talking about the apostles. Peter was a 3.5. Now, he was the first pope, wasn't he? He founded the Church of Rome.
I'm not sure on that historical detail, to be quite honest, Nigel.
Well, he was a 3.5, so he was a powerhouse.
Yeah.
And then John, who was a cousin of Jesus, he was a 3, and Paul was a 3. So some of these guys, given the state of the planet and the state of humanity 2,000 years ago,
they were very high initiates.
They would have stood out.
Yeah.
They would have stood out. That's an interesting point, Nigel. I kind of like our listeners to think about, have you ever met someone that's kind of part of you's gone, whoa, what have I encountered here? Mm. You know, and I don't mean a serial killer, but, you know, I'd like our listeners to think about, have you ever encountered someone who you went...
Stood out.
Yeah. Peter, have you met someone that you
went...
Well,
he met Krem.
Yeah, Benjamin Krem.
Yeah, well, he was a 3-degree initiate.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I've met Benjamin Krem several times.
Yeah.
And the last conference I went to in the States, the Share International Conference, I hugged him. Mm. And he just had a gentleness and a calmness about him. Mm-hmm. And when he looked at you, he was almost blind. Mm. You know, people were having to lead him around. I think it was 2010, 2011 I was at that conference. But there was just something coming off him. Mm. And the other person I felt the same thing was Deepak Chopra. I spent some time with Deepak Chopra when he was involved with transcendental meditation and Maharishi. Mm-hmm. He was delivering what they called advanced techniques. Mm. And he came to New Zealand and I got to drive him around and he taught me an advanced meditation technique. And I sat in his presence and started to transcend, which is transcending in Maharishi's terms is going beyond thought. Mm. So I sat next to Deepak Chopra and he looked at me to teach me a technique and I started to transcend. So I started to like slip into a meditative state. But anyway, getting back to the numbers game, chaps, when we talk about Jesus' disciples in Palestine and we talk about a 3-degree initiate, 3.5 degree initiate, and that they would, for that time and the evolutionary level of the planet, they would have been extremely highly evolved individuals. Yeah. What would the number be now? Because, Peter, you talked about that German pianist, young girl
Alma. Yeah.
So would we recognise a third degree now? I'm assuming that because of the ongoing planetary evolution and therefore human evolution, that we are getting much more advanced souls coming through. And the needs of the time is probably bringing through more highly evolved souls. So I'm guessing there's more third degree initiates, more fourth degree initiates around?
Yes, I think there will be, definitely. I think it's just, the signs are there that this is happening.
The apostles that we were talking about earlier, Peter, now some of them have moved on to become masters.
Yes, I mean, even latter third-degree initiates like Mozart is now a master, so that's only, we're only talking 200 to 300 years.
So once you reach that 3-degree initiate stage,
very, very quick, yeah.
The progression is a lot quicker than it is, as you said on the previous program, between 1 and 2, when you're trying to work through the astral centre issues. Yeah. It takes a number of lifetimes.
Oh, yeah, a lot of lifetimes. And I can't remember the exact number, but I'm sure Benjamin Creme has said probably 10 or 12 or something.
Yeah, he said
maybe 13.
7 or 8 is normal, but up to 17.
Yeah, that's right.
Depending on the person.
But once you get past that 3, it does speed up because you're managing the physical sheaths, right? You're managing the mental, emotional and physical. So then you become much more open to and receptive of the spiritual energies.
So if you're listening to this program for the first time, when we're talking about astral, we're talking about the emotional aspect of the vehicle.
That's right, yep.
The conversations that we've been having about these people, these individuals who have helped shape our culture, shape our civilization, shape the direction that our countries, our nations have moved in. A knowledge of the race structure of some of these great individuals is really important because it helps understand their growth, their development, their actions, their qualities, and why they behaved and why they moved in a particular direction, their destiny in that lifetime. Because you've just mentioned Mozart, for an example. It helps you understand, if you know what his race structure is, it makes you understand better why he moved in that direction, why he made such an impact.
That's right. Yes, well, I mean, the initiates will move forward the spiritual aspect of the nation that they're in. I was just looking at these poets, English poets, and the race structure of Britain is Ray 2 soul. And 8 out of 10 of these poets, of English poets, have Ray 2 souls. So they're enhancing that soul. They've come in to do that job.
So the message for our listeners is you have incarnated in a time and place for a reason, and your ray structure will reflect that. Okay. Now, that's interesting, Peter, because you are discussing before, we've talked about the ray structure of individuals and how they contribute and how it qualifies humanity's history on this planet when you understand the ray structure of the shakers and movers. But let's talk about the ray structure of nations. So you mentioned England or Great Britain?
Well, it's Great Britain, yes.
Is a Ray 2 soul.
Yes, it is.
So that's love, wisdom.
That's right, that's correct. And therefore the poets come through as Ray 2.
And
with the exception
the artists and the writers.
Yes,
right?
They are pushing forward on the soul aspect of the nation.
So what's the personality structure of...
Well, they're Ray 1, and you can see this organisation thing of England is Ray 1, and their organisation all around the world will organise your nation for you.
Yes,
yeah.
And Ray 1 is will to power.
Will, yes, a will aspect.
Will to power. Yeah. So when you look at that, you can see why Britain was building empires. That's because they were going out and going, we've got a good system and you're going to love it, and just pushing themselves.
Yeah. We'll just take a short break, folks, while we answer that phone. Just a moment. Okay, our telephonist has taken good care of that call that just came through. Technology, as you said, John, is one of the greatest rorts on the planet, isn't
technology, my whole working life is bathed in technology, and if I ever meet Bill Gates, I've got a particularly special message for him, which will probably get me arrested.
And also, we'd have to edit that off the program as well. Hey, look, it's really interesting what you guys are talking about, because author Benjamin Krem says the science of psychology is actually still in its infancy.
That's right, yeah.
He says, seeking to understand the workings of the human psyche, in psychotherapy, it works to alleviate the symptoms of stress, the science of stress and disorder. But until an understanding is reached of man as a soul in incarnation, governed by certain ray influences, much will remain obscure. Isn't that interesting? Much will remain obscure. So the whole realm of psychology and psychotherapy is still in its infancy.
Yeah, well, you look at Alice Bailey's book on the esoteric psychology, and it's all about ray structure. Absolutely all of it. And these 2 books of it.
Yeah, there's 2 volumes of it.
Yeah.
And it's the soul that determines the ray of the personality and its vehicles. It's the soul.
That determines the ray and personality of the vehicle.
So before we incarnate, our soul
is
selecting the correct rays of influence and structure.
That's amazing.
Right. And of course, its soul stays the same. So it's not changing from life to life.
And of course, it's the ray that determines our strengths, but also our weaknesses, isn't it? Our limiting factors.
Yes, and our learning potential.
We're going to have to do a whole program on rays at some stage, guys. Take a deep breath, because it's a massive subject, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
And you and I, John, we're guessing what some of our ray structures are.
Yeah.
But Peter, you actually know. Who did you get to read your?
Benjamin Krem's master, actually, Benjamin Krem.
You managed to get your ray structure confirmed.
Yeah, you had to make a serious effort to discover your own rays to start with, which really requires intuition if you've got it.
Yeah.
I mean, we've all got it, but we've got to try and bring it through. But it's a question of looking at the often the negative aspects of the ray and say, I hate that. Well, that's probably the one.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. Hey, so modern psychology, getting back to that, I'm intrigued by this. So firstly, they need to understand your ray structure. And wouldn't karma come into that
Absolutely.
to a degree as well?
But really only the 3 or 4 lords of karma are going to be able to answer your next question.
But if you're a psychologist and you understood the influence of the rays and incarnation, and that we are souls in incarnation, you could work out to a degree, as you say, the strengths and weaknesses of the patient you're working with. But at some point you'd have to be able to go, well, Bob, I'm sorry, that's karma, mate. We can't do anything about that. Suck it up. But
it also would help and will contribute to the education of the future, won't it? Because hopefully we will have teachers in the school, in the classroom, who understand the ray structures of the child. So you can't provide a syllabus that's going to work for 25 students in your class, because there are different stages of evolution and different ray structures.
Points of evolution and ray structure.
Yeah, and the teachers in the future must say a fair way off perhaps, but they will understand how to understand the ray structure and the point of evolution of each child.
I was surprised to discover that Steiner doesn't go into ray structure, as in Steiner himself, but also the education process.
But perhaps this information didn't come through until it was probably about his lifetime, wasn't it? The 1920s, when Alice Bailey was started writing about ray structures. But that would have been new information on a conscious level.
Released into
Yes.
What do we ever discover what point of evolution Steiner was?
2.2.
2.2?
No, I think it was 2.2, wasn't it?
So he would maybe be not cognising that stuff himself.
It's possible, isn't it? It just shows you how seriously educated our teachers of the future will need to be.
Very much.
One thing that we've talked about on this program a lot this year has been the outgoing energy of the sixth ray and the incoming energy of the seventh ray. And I came across a really good piece by Benjamin Creme. He says, and I'd just be interested to get your feedback on this, but I thought it explained it at a level which I could understand, and that's something. That's an achievement. Creme says the problem for the exponents of the sixth ray is their ideals cannot be externalized. Why? Because the ideal cannot be grounded lower than from the astral plane, the plane of the emotions. The seventh ray is an intensely practical, pragmatic ray of influence. The exponents of the seventh ray have their feet on the ground.
Then clearly I've got no seventh ray. And Peter, how many sixes have you got in your ray structure?
Four sixes if you count the sub-rays as well.
So no chance for you either, really. Because,
Not until next time round, perhaps.
Sixth ray is just, it's really difficult.
Yes.
And it's really difficult. Now, I would say, Peter, if we look at current state of the world, planet Earth, humanity, there's this intense polarisation going on, right?
Yes,
and let me say between me and we, right? Yeah. So right-wing conservative politics tend to be around me, and the incoming ideology, incoming thought is around we, right? They're the two polarities. Surely that polarity is being driven by Ray 6.
Yes.
What do you think?
Well, Creme says our present problem is the result of the fact that these two highly potent energies, sixth ray and seventh ray, are functioning simultaneously and in roughly equal potency. And I suspect that's exactly where we are, in equal potency. One's gradually going out, one's gradually coming in. So their effects are balanced. Neither dominates. No wonder we've got a problem.
Yeah, well, you see, one of the main problems is the personality rays of America and Russia. They're both sixth ray.
So the fanaticism.
So they see in each other the things they hate in themselves.
Right, right.
And this is the conflict.
Mirror image.
So, sorry, say again, the soul of Russia and the United States.
No, the personality.
The
personality of America, 6. Personality of Russia is 6.
Okay, so they both have that ideology, a strong sense of ideology, which could lead to fanaticism. Mm-hmm. Gee, that's a surprise there. What is America's soul?
Ray 2. And so
love wisdom.
They will be great once their soul is ruling. But Russia has Ray 7, which is the Aquarian energy.
So what does that tell us?
Well, it tells us they've got their feet on the ground.
Not at the moment. They've got their feet in Ukraine.
Well, the ground there, isn't it?
Well, yeah, I guess. Although, well, let's not get into that.
Here we go. Steiner. Rudolf Steiner was a 2.2.
2.2.
Born in Austria. Remember we talked about Maria Montessori as well. She was a 1.65.
Peter, getting back to this Russian situation, Benjamin Creme has said that there will be a religion for the New Age that will come out of Russia.
That's right.
And that will be the Ray 7.
It's
because Ray 7 is ritual and order.
Yeah. Ceremonial,
ritual and order.
That's right.
That is interesting.
And it's also interesting if you think about two of the key people that brought all this information through in the late 1800s, early 1900s were Helena Roerich from St. Petersburg in Russia.
That's
and,
right.
of course, Helena Blavatsky, both Russian women, both 4-degree initiates. They were both divine human beings.
Yeah.
And both Russian.
You see, yes.
And if we acknowledge that if the soul dictates your soul ray and selects the other rays for you to work with over a lifetime or many lifetimes, then those initiates deliberately came through Russia. Deliberately came through Russia, right?
Yeah, they brought the information through.
And Alice Bailey, She was from the UK, and she was a 3.2,
3.5. Remember, because I'm going, what was her husband? And her husband was a 1.7.
Foster Bailey was about a 1.6 or 1.8.
And I'm going,
and you're going, how did they get on?
How did they have conversations?
Yeah.
She's divine and floating through the kitchen, not needing food or water or oxygen, and he's sitting there at the table demanding toast.
Scrambled eggs.
What was their
breakfast.
Honestly, what was their marriage like?
Well, he wasn't a bad author himself. I enjoy some of his books.
That is interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Alice
the more you
Bailey,
go into it, the more
3.2.
interesting it is.
Yeah. Alice Bailey, sorry.
She was a 3.2, and Foster Bailey was a 1.85. He's getting up to a 2.
1.8. Oh, yeah.
They'd be reasonably
They could have had
compatible.
conversations.
Yeah. You're listening to Emergence News, and this has been a rather stimulating conversation, John. Where did it all come from?
I don't know.
It wasn't what we planned.
We're just really interesting men sitting in a small room together.
Having a chat about spiritual matters is quite good, isn't it? Can you bring it home for us? What have you got there, Peter?
I've got a master's message here from Share International, and it's called The Coming of the Great Lord. For some, the coming into our lives of Maitreya augurs naught but fear, disaster, and other potents of doom. They see him as the arch-fiend, the Antichrist, and tremble at his name. So distorted is their understanding of the Scriptures that they see the manifestation of God's representative as the embodiment of evil. This it was in Palestine long ago when Jesus taught his simple law of love. Among the adversaries then were many who now await with dread Maitreya's appearance. They recognize again the intonation of love, but conditioned by fear and misunderstanding, prepare to reject it as false. When Maitreya makes known his presence and role, they will find to their astonishment that he means them no harm. On the contrary, they will discover his love for those who fear and oppose him equals that for the multitudes who will welcome him with open hearts. They will find too that gradually their fear and dread will soften into a growing recognition of his divinity. Step by step, their doubts and fears will change into admiration and eventual trust, and his counsel and advice they will eagerly seek. So will it be. Pockets of opposition may persist for long, but in time, all with the most bigoted will accept him as teacher and friend. When they do, they will find in him a counselor and guide who will take them into the understanding of their own divine origin and nature. He will free them from the fear which binds them now and enable them to savour the reality of being untrammeled by the doctrine and dogma. Many there are who fear the coming of the Lord of Love. Their own experience of that love will set them free. Within weeks, many for themselves will hear and see the great Lord. They will know and recognise him and establish him in their hearts. News of the experience will travel far and wide and awaken humanity to the miracle in their midst, in their own tongue. He will outline his proposals and views and seek their cooperation and help. In this way, a new climate of expectancy will be created by Maitreya himself. Thus will lead directly to the day of declaration and the beginning of his open mission. He will seek to allay the fear of those who see in him the advocate of evil, Satan's henchman. He will succour and heal them and bring them to his fold. He will present to them the Master Jesus and other masters, and thus remove the doubt and born of their confusion. Thus will it be, and thus will the Lord of Love complete his task, bringing eventually all the sons of God under his divine tutelage.
All this information can be found on the Share International website, www.share-international.org, and also don't forget the podcasts, which are available on the Plains FM website.
We welcome your comments, questions and feedback. Please contact us at emergencenews@gmail.com.